Today we're in our vegetable garden looking at some sad looking tomatoes, unfortunately, and joining us is Dr. John Damicone, who is our plant pathologist. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be here today, Casey.
Thank you. So can you help us with our tomatoes? I know they're looking like a lot of people's right now.
Being a plant pathologist, I really like diseases, so it's pretty fun to be here. Anyway, one thing we have here that we found on some of these declining tomato plants is Rootknot nematode. And if you see those little galls in the roots, it can get much more severe than that. But those get into soil and they increase on plants like tomatoes, particularly if your rotation is limited, where your space is limited. It's a big problem in gardens in Oklahoma. So yeah, it can hurt the vigor of the tomato plants, and it can actually kill them.
And so what's the best option to do if we know we have nematodes? I know crop rotation is always important.
Crop rotation is important, adding lots of organic matter.
Okay.
Nematodes really like sandier type soils that are well drained and have a lot of water. If you increase the organic matter, they can't move between those spaces in between the soil particles as well, and there's a lot of microbial activity in the soil, so they don't do as well.
Okay.
This is not particularly severe root knot here, but
because they can get as thick as your finger. Is that correct?
Exactly. Okay. I have that in my garden. And the way
it's good to know that even the expert has those problems.
And the way I deal with it is to plant nematode-resistant varieties that have the N designation. You know, many of the improved varieties will have a V for verticillium, which we don't have much of here. F for fusarium, we have quite a bit of that here. Okay. And then N for nematode. So if it's like a VFN variety, like a Celebrity, for example, or there's lots of new ones.
That's going to give you your best
protection against root knot nematode.
And in fact, we have a couple of examples of, you know, choosing a hybrid that has some resistance versus some of your non-hybrids, your heirlooms and things like that. You can see how obviously our Sweet 100's doing much better, our Super Sweet 100. Yes, it is.
And I have really good luck with these cherries in my garden as well. For some reason they seem to, I guess they grow so vigorously that maybe that has something to do with it. Maybe it's just the innate vigor of them.
Yeah. And perhaps maybe the fruit's not on there quite as long.
True, true. Yeah.
Making it susceptible. So you got some leaf damage to it for us.
Yeah,
too,
the other thing, you know, our humidity's been really high here this year. Mm-hmm. And what have we had rainfall here in Payne County in June? We probably had close to 6 inches of rain.
Yeah.
So the humidity's been high, lots of rain, and we've seen a lot of foliar diseases. I have a student that's been going around surveying tomato diseases this year, and we're seeing lots of bacterial spot and speck, and that's what we're seeing on these leaves, these little brown spots that, now there's some insect feeding there also, but those little brown spots there, and you flip the leaf over and they're kind of greasy, well, they tend to be kind of greasy looking. But those will burn the lower leaves off the plant, and they will actually spot the fruit. Okay. We're seeing a lot of fruit spot this year. Typically, we don't see as much of that. But then we have fungus diseases too, like septoria over in Tulsa County. And then I think early blight's more of a problem in the southern part of the state. But here in the north central part of Oklahoma, we see lots of these bacterial diseases.
And is there anything we can do about these?
Unfortunately, for example, in peppers, you can get really good bacterial spot resistant varieties, but not in tomatoes. So we recommend that people spray preventively with copper. We call them copper fungicides, but the copper is one of the few materials that's active on bacteria. Okay. And you have to get on a schedule and start applying those before you see the problem, or you have to kind of anticipate it. Okay. Maybe you start around bloom, and then if you're worried about residue on the fruit, you can kind of quit when it's picking time. But that period there, if you can minimize it, it will help. Bacterial spot and speck will not put you out of the tomato business. You'll still harvest fruit. It'll just cut your season short. Okay. Because as the disease moves up the plant, it exposes fruit to sun scald and the plant vigor just declines over the season. So.
All right. So, and speaking of warmer temperatures and kind of slowing our harvest, I mean, the temperatures affect tomato harvest as well. A lot of people might not realize that, but the higher temperatures, the pollen actually becomes infertile.
Right. Yeah, it's harder to get fruit set. I think the humidity helps a little bit. Mm-hmm. When you get up in the hundreds, obviously it's not tomato weather, but highs in the mid 70s is not tomato weather. Lows in the mid 70s, excuse me, in the evenings. When it only gets down to 73, 74, and then it hits 90 the next day, that's where we get into a lot of these uneven ripening or blotchy ripening if you leave the fruit on the plant too long.
Right.
We encourage people to, as soon as they start turning red, pick them then, bring them inside where it's 70 degrees and have them ripen on your kitchen counter.
Okay. Well, right. Tomatoes are one of our favorites, but they're not always the easiest to grow.
No, there's entire books written on tomato diseases and insect pests, so they're tough.
All right.
Particularly in our climate.
Well, thank you, Dr. Damicone, for telling us this information.
Casey.
We hope you enjoyed this video. It's part of our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. You can also find even more videos on our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel. And join us on social media for great gardening tips, photos, and discussion.